Indie Mogul.
Welcome to this week's Movie Math. Here are today's headlines. Paranormal Activity 2 in Hollywood gets cheap, Scott Pilgrim and Kick-Ass take a stand against Hollywood, an unexpected director is being considered for Mission Impossible 4, and of course the weekend box office, where one has to ask, is How to Train Your Dragon the first casualty of increased ticket prices? Click on the story you want to watch or sit back and enjoy them all. Now let's get started. It was announced this week that little-known director Todd Williams will be directing the sequel to the little movie that could, Paranormal Activity. Who is Todd Williams? Well, because we have to ask that question, that means he's cheap, and thus benefiting from Hollywood's new spendthrift ways. In fact, Williams beat out established director Brian De Palma for the gig, and even I Am Legend screenwriter Akiva Goldsman, who is trying to make the jump to directing. Hollywood is even working to cut costs in front of the camera. Variety has an article this week about studios turning to cheaper, lesser-known actors for their tentpole picks, i.e. Sam Worthington and Zoe Saldana for Avatar. And Avatar not only proves that paying actors scale is a profitable strategy, but that digital actors are not far behind. The latest issue of Forbes magazine has a cover story on how the special effects used in The Curious Case of Benjamin Button and Avatar are paving the way for digital actors. Not only does this technology allow Jeff Bridges to play his younger self in Tron Legacy, but soon Bruce Lee could be starring in a new movie, even though he died in 1973. Yeah, Hollywood's pretty excited about an actor they can store on a shelf and do whatever they want with on screen. Only question is, will you want to watch? Everyone knows that Iron Man is based on a comic book, but the arrival of the new Scott Pilgrim vs. the World trailer this week reminds us that comic book movies come in all shapes, sizes, and styles. Like Kick-Ass, which opens in April, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is incredibly faithful to its source material. To do that, both movies had to be made outside the Hollywood system. Kick-Ass is personally funded by its director Matthew Vaughn, and indie comic book publisher Oni Press is producing Scott Pilgrim itself, a la Marvel. Now the only question is, who's right? Hollywood or the fanboys? Is it important for a movie to be faithful to the original comic, or does it need to be Hollywoodized? Speed Racer and Watchmen were lauded for their faithfulness, but failed to connect with mainstream audiences and fizzled at the box office. And the most successful comic book movie of all time, The Dark Knight, is faithful to the idea of the original comic book, but makes plenty of changes to the story for the big screen. Will audiences spark to a stylization on screen that they haven't on the page? We comic book readers have always felt that mainstream audiences just haven't discovered the medium of comics, and when they see movies like Kick-Ass and Scott Pilgrim, they'll see what they're missing. That question is about to finally get answered, and that answer will have major implications for both industries. Tom Cruise's career kinda sucks right now, so he's forced to go back to his fallback franchise, Mission Impossible. So Mission Impossible is being prepped for a May 2011 release and is currently shopping for a director. One director being considered? Brad Bird. Yes, I'm talking about Iron Giant Brad Bird, The Incredibles Brad Bird. Who hasn't watched either of those films and wished that live-action movies could be as good? Apparently Bird feels the same way himself, as he's been trying to make the jump to live-action filmmaking for a while now, developing a film about the 1906 San Francisco earthquake over at Warner Brothers. And if Bird gets either of these gigs, he'll be joining fellow Pixar guru Andrew Stanton in the exclusive club of animation to live-action directors. Stanton, who directed Finding Nemo and Wall-E, is staying in-house at Disney directing their live-action adaptation of John Carter of Mars. So, will these directors be able to work their magic with flesh and blood as well as they do with pixels? I mean, they're used to working with a crew of egoless animators. Tom Cruise? He's got a pretty big ego.
Hey Indie Mogul, I'm Third Floor Productions, and this is a 10-second trailer to my new short film called Public Service.
Take your cigarette butts back. Action. Whoa!
Mike, don't work here.
Was Green Eggs and Ham a TV show?
This weekend, Hollywood raised ticket prices, particularly for 3D and IMAX 3D movies, and audiences responded by giving How to Train Your Dragon a less than stellar opening. Sure, the movie took the #1 spot with $43 million, but that is considerably less than DreamWorks' previous IMAX 3D movie, Monsters vs. Aliens. In fact, How to Train Your Dragon couldn't even match the debut of Kung Fu Panda, which played in just IMAX and no 3D. Who's to blame? Is it the marketing department, 3D overkill, or those ticket prices? I went to see How to Train Your Dragon on Saturday night on IMAX 3D, and for the first time ever there was no advance line for the movie. It didn't even sell out, and I was told it was selling out downstairs on the cheaper screens. Are audiences refusing to shell out the extra cash for 3D and IMAX 3D in general, or just for family movies? We'll have to wait and see what happens this summer as a mix of genres hit the really big screen. Meanwhile, second place went to another 3D movie, Alice in Wonderland, which took in $17 million in its fourth weekend. Falling another 50%, as it's done pretty much every weekend since it opened, Alice is now up to $293 million here in the US and up to a whopping $656 million worldwide. Kaloo-kalay indeed. If Disney doesn't make a sequel, they've gone mad. And third place went to Hot Tub Time Machine, which opened at $13.6 million. That's a far cry from The Hangover's opening last summer, which many say Hot Tub Time Machine is trying to emulate. It's so-so news for John Cusack, as it shows he can still open a movie that's not a big-budget extravaganza like 2012, but he can't take it to the #1 spot either. But Hot Tub Time Machine was made for a mere $36 million, so it's sure to turn a profit, if not at the box office and certainly on DVD. And that's this week's Movie Math. As always, thanks for watching. And if you want my review of How to Train Your Dragon, check out my Facebook page in the notes section. I'm Grace Randolph, and we just did some Movie Math.
Subscribe, comment, rate it.